it became harder and harder to keep these operations sort of hidden from the public, or at least the role of JSOC in all of these operations hidden from the public, because that was the main thing that was happening in Iraq, at least in terms of offensive operations. At the same time, and this is something we're going to be writing about, I believe, in the high side in the near future, but they started expanding the number of undercover operations that they conducted. Human intelligence on the ground, non-official cover, case officers, non-official cover, commercial cover, as it's sometimes called, which basically just means you're taking somebody from Delta Force or from Task Force Orange or from SEAL Team 6, where actually this really took off, and pretending that they're no longer in the military, and now that they are a geologist or an import-export person or something like that. And that became a fairly massive operation. As I say in Relentless Strike, I report in Relentless Strike that the squadrons that specialized in that were stood up, sort of, there weren't pre-existing squadrons. They grew out of, in Delta's case, they grew out of a small troop, which is a company-sized operation. And the squadrons are battalion-sized organizations or level organizations. Those became, from nothing, they became the most prestigious squadrons to command in the two best-known special mission units. So they did a lot of that as well. In the book, I have sort of detailed descriptions of undercover operatives in Syria at the height of the Iraq War. I'm doing sort of a lot of James Bondy sort of spy thriller stuff, wearing disguises,
Why
sneaking
was it
into
that
safe
why was
houses.
it that sorry, why was it that JSOC needed to do this as opposed to just enlisting CIA for this sort of thing?
That's a good question. JSOC had, first of all, these were, in Iraq was a battlefield. So once you have a war zone, then the military gets to do more things than the agency does. Secondly, in Iraq, fairly early in the war, the CIA realized that, and they didn't really like to admit this, but they didn't have freedom of movement, whereas JSOC basically did. And it got to the point where sometimes JSOC would have to protect a CIA case officer going out to meet his or her assets in the field, because the CIA didn't have really enough shooters, if you like, to do that. And JSOC already had the ability to conduct, the special mission units did, to conduct what they call low-vis missions, low visibility missions, which basically means you're in disguise driving a car that doesn't look out of place in Baghdad, sort of like a beat up Toyota or something, and you've got local dress on, you've got your weapons, but they're hidden, and you're driving out to, maybe you're going to slow down the car and pick up a guy who knows he's supposed to be standing on the side of the road at a certain time, and that's either your asset or the CIA's asset, and taking him to a meeting. And I'm sure that the CIA was doing stuff in Syria as well, but this certainly would have been relevant to the Iraq War. What they were really doing was trying to track, and to the greatest extent possible they could, undercut and sabotage the flow of foreign fighters through Syria. So that's not necessarily Syrians coming into Iraq to join Al-Qaeda in Iraq and fight the Americans and the coalition, and to destabilize Iraq. But, any of the other Arabs, Pakistanis, you name it, that were coming in from North Africa, all kinds of places that were funneling foreign fighters the governments of those countries weren't, but the Islamist groups were funneling them to fight the Americans and the rest of the coalition in Iraq. So they were trying to, even the intelligence that you could pull out of a safe house, for instance, in Syria could lead to a diplomatic démarche to a country and to Syria itself. Hey, look, you say you're not funneling foreign fighters, but here's a bunch of intelligence we've got that says you are. So that's why. I mean, I think at the time, there was more than enough work to be done in places like Syria for both organizations.